Enoch's godless rule. Now let us for a while return to the city of Enoch, and I will show you in passing what the situation there was like after a period of only 30 years. And behold, Enoch had now chosen the most beautiful wife, and in addition 2 concubines, and kept committing excessive harlotry with them. As a result, his mind had become so darkened that he completely forgot his duties of government. The few thoughts he was still barely capable of thinking were occupied entirely with a pleasant life, glamour, soft garments, and harlotry. As long as his subjects brought him many dishes of excellent fruits of every kind, also all sorts of glitter and soft garments, woven of the most delicate grass which grew at the foot of the mountains, he was wholly satisfied, and left law and government alone. His subjects, noticing that he had become indifferent, took advantage of his blindness. Also his servants noticed what was happening, and being as crafty and cunning as the serpent itself, sought in many ways to lull their lord to sleep. They deceitfully granted the subjects all sorts of amusements, as long as they diligently delivered to them their ever-increasing number of gifts. And behold, since these servants now saw that they could get away with all these things with impunity, they began to rule the people, giving them laws. Firstly, they had to worship their sovereign as a god by bringing all kinds of sacrifices. Secondly, the most beautiful daughter of some subject had to be given to the sovereign, and the fortunate subject who became such a giver would be exempted from all taxes, become the free owner of his house, and would be admitted to the mansion of the sovereign, where he could socialize with the servants, and once a year he would be able to meet his sovereign face to face and thank him for his great grace and all the privileges enjoyed. And behold, this was, as you would say, a stroke of genius on the part of the serpent, for now the parents began to keep their daughters at home, giving particular care to them that they might become specially tender and beautiful in order to gain a certain degree of freedom for the future. Such a beauty would then no longer look at the common man, as she felt herself destined for the sovereign. Now what was the result of such reciprocal deceit? The worst you could imagine, namely, the servants finally seized the entire government by cunningly convincing Enoch that he was now no longer the people's ruler, but their God, and that it would now be beneath the dignity of his divine status of exalted and unspeakable sublimity to give laws to the worms of the earth. Because of their boundless respect for his sublime holiness, his servants were willing to take this degrading business upon themselves. Thus he should do nothing except give a sign of either his pleasure or dissatisfaction, and graciously accept the treasures his subjects would be gathering for him in great abundance. Furthermore, he should show himself to the people only once a year, when everyone would be prostrating themselves before him and worship him from the dust. And if he then felt like showing a particular favor to one of the dust-covered worms, this would be done by a hard kick on the head of the worm with his half-foot, and the one granted such a sublime favor, maybe for offering his beautiful and charming daughter, shall be promptly raised from the ground to behold the divine sublimity of the Lord of all might and power, and he shall then become a free citizen of the half-city of Enoch, the exalted God. Such words of his servants flattered Enoch's self-love and vanity to such a degree that he immediately fully agreed to all their proposals, all for his utter foolishness. And lo, at last his servants had achieved that for which they had so long been striving, namely the law-giving, the punishing, and thereby the whole government. Thus, instead of one, there were now 10 rulers who did not make the least distinction between men who were their brothers and animals, except that they classed them as rational and irrational beasts. Only when such a rational beast had been successful in playing some evil trick for their benefit, he was granted the fight of calling himself a man. When these 10 rulers saw how the animal men blindly obeyed their laws, naturally because of their great fear of the countless ill treatments, each one of them in time chose also 10 servants from the free citizens of the city, and with their wives and children, raised them to a certain nobility. However, in return for this favored their daughters, if they were sufficiently beautiful and charming, had to be given to them as whores, with whom they begot countless children, all of whom were handed to the animal men to be raised. When they had grown up, the males became also animal men, and the females, who through the cunning of the serpent had usually become very beautiful and charming, were made whores too, often already at the age of 12, and thereby made barren. And when in a short while they had lost all their attraction, they were cast out to the beasts and had to work for them. They were called Huhurai, i.e., people who tend the beasts. And behold, this way of life continued for over 30 years. But then, since in this unchaste manner the population had grown to several 100,000 and spread all over the land, and could no longer be overseen, 10 further cities were built with the unsuspecting agreement of Enoch, the now totally weak and inactive god, and received the names of the 10 rulers, which were Kad the thief, Karak the lord of horse, Noah the deceiver, Huid the wicked, Helot the cold, Uvrak seed of the serpent, Farak the cruel, Molakim the liar, Ovrahim the fine flatterer, and Tyrak the great evildoer. Each of these cities was built exactly after the model of the city of Enoch, with a high castle in the center like Enoch's mansion, and surrounded by a rampart and moat. And consider this, since men in those times did not as yet have tools, as cramps, spades, hoes, and picks, they had to use their hands to dig up the ground like field mice.